Okay, now we can do a Twitch mic check.
Can some? Oh yeah, presumably people can hear us. How was my mic coming through? I think it was crackly last time.
It is very clear.
I can hear you. What's up?
Hey, Lynx. Let me just grab a few more people. We're live on Twitch as well.
Hello.
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 Present.
Hello.
I don't know. Did we figure out how many people the stage holds? Oh, I guess we're restreaming it anyway.
Yeah, it's currently
Like
getting streamed on
Spectrum?
Twitch. So we have capacity. As for how many people can actually watch it in the Discord stage, it's that nebulous number based on how many boosts the server has. So it is a number.
Dylan, you might want to do a plug on how you're capturing questions. And those of us on the stage, we can probably open up the question thing.
Yeah, so we've had a thread going in the suggestions forum for the last couple of days that has a bunch of questions in it. So that's let me feel kind of a backstop list of questions that we'll go through. But we'll also be pulling questions from the chat. So do feel free to ask away. We'll be keeping an eye on that and grabbing stuff from other places. I'm sure we won't have time to answer everything, but if there is anything that's super popular, then we can chase up answers after the stage and get things updated in the FAQ.
For those of us on the stage, did you want us to go through the Confluence page? Is that the
That
best way?
works fine. Yep. I think just pull questions from wherever you want. But there's again, sometimes there's a lull in the questions in the chat, or they're all asking about what super duper future feature we haven't even thought about or considered is going to be implemented. So that's when hopefully the Confluence doc fills in some backup ones.
I guess we can probably kick off. I think most people are probably here. Maybe.
If anyone thinks they should be on the stage but aren't yet, feel free to fire me a message and I can.
We're 100% recording, right?
Yep.
Because we promised people we would publish the thing.
We should have 2 mechanisms for recording, so it should be touch wood foolproof. There'll be
Might be worth doing an @everyone in announcements, just to catch any people not using the thing. And you can do an embed in that. So yeah, I do an @everyone in announcements, and that will just grab those who haven't clicked the little buttons. So just sort of maybe while we're finishing off with that, just to give everyone kind of a broad overview of where we're at, we're in the middle of our industry pre-alpha, so we've been mastering builds and just handing them out to a relatively small group of people, scientists, people who work at space organizations or companies, and a few content creators and stuff like that. So one advantage of that is that it means that we don't have to spend a lot of time in the town hall sort of showing where the progress offers and stuff like that, because we're not necessarily really great at that. And you will have noticed that a number of content creators have actually posted some videos and stuff like that that are really good and do a really good job of sort of demonstrating where the game's at, what we've been focused on, and what we haven't. So that my hope is that's made this a lot more efficient than last time, because we can really sort of stick to, I suppose, more traditional town hall type stuff and get into things and stuff like that. And I see, Dylan, you have done your announcement.
Yes.
Maybe we should kick off then. So the first question I can see here is next milestone. So Sva, or is that Fiverr, says, what are the next big steps for Kitten Space Agency now that a pre-alpha is out and an alpha is on the way? What are you going to spend more time working on? Are you going to spend more time working on the foundation, or start heading towards content such as parts, solar system, and that? A really good question. So we had our last steering group. Our previous steering groups have been various states of nebulous sometimes. Part of that is because a lot of game development we found at the studio is about finding the fun. So it's about sort of poking a few directions, figuring out what's working, figuring out what's not, particularly figuring out where the challenges are with a view towards our pillars. And we've kind of settled a bunch of things in terms of how we're approaching stuff, and things have been working out in some ways that are really good. So we focused on those. So our next milestone we're heading towards is all around vehicle parts, particularly heavily how they're rendered and how they're put together in data, and then that will flow on from there. I would say we're going to be in pre-alpha for quite a while. So even once we come out of the industry pre-alpha, then we might go into a more open alpha, which would... so I think we're a wee way away from what I would, consider an alpha, or quite a wee way away from that. But we're working towards, and you probably, if you look through the change log, you'd see that a lot of the things there are the kind of things that we think that we'd need in a public pre-alpha. And one of the important parts of having it relatively closed is, and I'm sure many of those who are in the pre-alpha who are in here listening to it now will attest, there's been just some gotchas that have happened when people booted up the game. We had an issue with Bandicam, which caused a hard crash when you started it, that we had to get around. So there's just been a lot of little things like that, and that's been why it's really important to have a closed off thing. Did anyone else want to attack that one? If it's just me talking, I'm going to lose my voice.
Shout outs to Morrow for fixing the Bandicam stuff, and all of us. Yeah, it's a good fix.
No, I think that's a good point there, Dean. Is like if people are like so keen to get their hands on it, we needed to do it slowly because it's untested. This is the first time we've had something from Brutal go out, so we just have to slowly build on the group of people that are using it so that we're not just overwhelmed, I guess. But yeah, that Bandicam one was a really good one. It just showed an example of it because it only really affected, one user who happened to be Scott Manley. So in a way, that was good. But yeah. And
Yeah,
I feel like
it's
it's a recurring
turned out to
pattern.
be.
Like Scott Manley is the first one to find some bug. Like it feels
It
familiar.
was. He was. Yeah.
And
He
it was
was.
a hard crash at the start of the game as well,
Yeah,
before it even
exactly.
booted, before it even posted.
So it turned out, I think Morrow can talk to that, but it was Bandicam and not using the Vulkan API correctly or something like that was the problem.
Yeah, so there's like a niche case of the Vulkan specification that Bandicam doesn't account for, and so whenever we started the game, it would cause a crash due to how we're doing things now. The problem is like technically on their side, but we did put a little band-aid fix just so people can use Bandicam.
Yeah, so that kind of sort of, I think that, do we think that answers the question? Yeah, so the next milestone's a pretty exciting one for us all, which is looking at vehicle parts, starting a lot with the groundwork that Morrow has done with instance part rendering, and basically starting to layer in Daishi's work that you will have seen posted in dev updates. So I bully him every time Daishi posts something in our internal Slack. I'm like, have you posted that to dev updates? So I'm sure you'll be getting lots of dev updates happening.
Might further expand on that. So the main focus of the next milestone is about
want to clear
parts.
things first with the boss. That's all.
The rendering of parts, and but that's not the only thing that's happening in the next milestone. That's the main focus of the next milestone.
Yes,
We've
no,
got a
it's
few other
quite
little
an exciting
bits.
stage. Yeah, looking really forward to once I finalise the blocking out and the style of parts to get into the texturing. I think that's where a lot of the character of things start to come together at that stage. So yeah, definitely yeah, going to be a pretty cool milestone for me.
Yeah, so Daishi's backgrounds with universal storage, which I really liked, and sort of just helping us blocking out bits and pieces. And I know, Jamie, you've long wanted us to get onto the parts, haven't you? So it's kind of good for us to be.
Yeah, once we get the rendering of parts happening, and then we'll start working on the data and the architecture, and then there'll be a whole bunch of stuff that flows on from that. But yeah.
Dylan, maybe you want to pull some questions out.
Yep, we can get into the backlog there. There were some of them get into really nitty gritty features, but you see how you go with them. Astro Cricket asked, are there any plans for fleshed out comms networks like dishes, etc.?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a former signals officer, so we've joked about it a few times. I think Jamie was like, was saying I should do that. I absolutely like. I'm a massive fan of remote tech and mods like that. I think it's super important. we try and thread a balance of putting in lots of options with also making it really difficult for us to have a cohesive vision. So this is something we spent a lot of time with on stationeers, where, early on we were just throwing in options for everything, but it became very difficult for us to put a cohesive experience together that we could actually kind of test. I don't just mean test in the idea of just booting up and make sure it works, but actually test the experiences delivering the fun that we wanted and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of those things that we'd allow people to turn off, or there's actually with mods like Remote Tech and other ones like that, there's a lot of options that you can have to tweak the experience, whether you want latency in and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely something we want to do. Oh, someone's editing the questions to cross them out as we go. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, Simon beat me to it. Thank you very much. There was one in chat that I thought might be interesting, or might be a curveball. You'll hate me for asking, but Sam Huck asked, "Hi there. Would you folks talk a bit about how you if you experience siloification in your software? Some of the development sneak peeks have given me the impression that the KSA team has a lot of very smart and awesome specialists, but how does that translate into effective code review, avoiding bus factors of one, etc.? How does a specialist in X review code of specialist Y and Z? Is it a problem?"
We don't do a lot of we don't hold code for code reviews typically, and we don't have people working in branches a lot. We try and have I was posting some of our coding standards in, I think, the modding and the veterans chat maybe as well, for a couple of people who have access, just to give us an idea of where we're coming from. I don't know, does someone else want to answer that? I feel like I'm talking heaps. And
I think that got covered a little bit when we even the last steering group, we had that sort of mini cross-functional team with talking about the work that both Jamie and Stefan were doing towards the next milestone. There was that really convenient overlap of Stefan looking at the sort of vehicle to vehicle collision stuff at the same time that Jamie was doing the ship to ship rendezvous stuff. So there are times when people end up working together on features and having to sort of interact with each other's systems that have been built.
Yeah, I don't think that's really
oh,
been a concern or issue so far. And to be honest, the way we operate, we all know what everyone's doing. We all sit in Discord talking to each other while we're working. So, I mean, it's not like people are working in silos at all. I'm a big fan of not having to do code reviews if you don't need to. Like, seriously, we don't need them. We've got smart enough people in the team that we don't need to concern ourselves with all that overhead. I mean, you can just end up crunching on branches and code reviews and not actually getting any work done.
Yeah, I mean, if you break the build, your name is on the commit. So yeah.
Yeah, it's quite often it's been me a couple of times. Actually, I think I've literally broke the bill in debug at the moment. Although I'm blaming that on MGUI. But yeah, so I think that a lot of the code gets heavily reviewed, but we don't block the submission waiting for someone to scroll through it, because I have found that for a lot of projects that process becomes kind of perfunctory. So basically you just run out and you grab someone and you kind of twist their arm, or that commit is really needed, so someone just goes in and just releases that commit just straight away. It 100% works for a lot of projects, particularly community ones or ones that are very stable. You want to, block someone's commit before someone's had a chance to review it, but we kind of do it sort of afterwards. So if someone's committed something, actually, I think Blackcrack's FERC commit was something that I had broken, and he fixed it, like literally, I think in his first few hours. So
I always think
sorry. Yeah, I'm just gonna comment. Code reviews are important. Like, if you have stability as a primary concern, that you need to maintain like a working build before anything else. And right now, the project isn't old enough or public enough yet for that to be the main priority. So it's not like changing production code on an online service or something. It can get much worse, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna add that ultimately we play the game, and all the work people are doing is immediately going into the game, and we basically test it and give feedback. We don't like to just have somebody make a theoretical library around a feature, and then like, oh hey, maybe someone later will use this, and then it'll get feedback. It's when people are doing work, it's four things that need to go into the game.
Do you want to pull another question out there, Dylan?
Yep. Jimmy Joe 2024 and I think Nova about the same time had asked something about progression in the game. What type of progression will KSA have, and will it have probes before crew?
So I guess I'll start with it. We are to pull out the thing. I think we say a bit. We're doing a lot, still doing a lot of the boring work, and which is sort of the groundwork, which you could see, and then a bunch of quality life on top of the boring work. In terms of progression, I think there's broad alignment along most of us that we want to make getting to orbit and make various milestones feel really special. That's been wrapped up as one of our confirmed pillars of wonder. So we want you to have that sense of wonder that first time you get a suborbital flight and you get that kind of goosebumps. That should be followed up with things that make those goosebumps even more, like music and sound and visuals and all of that kind of stuff. I'm also a really big fan of this mod, Final Frontier, which actually gives your Kerbals ribbons and stuff like that. And I think so I think progression comes in many forms. There's obviously the tech progression, which because we're experimenting with trying making it so that you're going to really care about your crew, which is, I'm a massive fan of Pro before crew and stuff like that. But alongside that needs to be a bunch of other stuff. So, that building that sense of wonder, having an ability for you to celebrate your Kerbals your kittens being good. How many times am I going to do that during this? And stuff like that. Yeah. So we'll have, and then also I think of our original design document, we actually talked about the kittens, but then Kerbals getting better at their job based on their progression. Someone else was going to say something.
I think that kind of that was one of the, and I realize now that kind of touched on one of the topics that I'd wanted to sort of cover early, and that was one of the first questions that got asked in the Discord thread was Alien Agent saying what kind of specific plans or wishes the developers had for colony building and interstellar travel. I chose that one just because the colonies questions come up a lot, but it's a good example of a part of the game that's so many parts removed from what we're currently working on that we're yeah, like what Dean said at the start about at the moment we're still sort of working on that foundational stuff, so we're not even it's really easy to sort of go down a brainstorming path of all the incredible things you could do, especially when you've gone the path of using brutal and stuff to restrict how many constraints you end up having to deal with down the line. Then the world becomes your oyster. So you do kind of need to maintain some discipline and making sure that you're working on the bit that's next, not all the things that could be.
I think we were. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Felipe.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah. Actually, it's funny because I was just annoying my wife earlier today about exactly this. Like I was saying, how like to me it seems like it's a really good idea to like make the first public build available like as it is, precisely because it's so foundational and there's like the bare like necessity features only at the moment, and gameplay is still like largely all in the future. So like the good thing about that is that it avoids exactly this type of pitfall that like but like KSP2 kind of set up for itself, like with the trailer and all, like in how they started off by saying colonies and interstellar travel and all that. And like they began by saying like this is the bare minimum to be considered like releasable. which is a very dangerous thing to say in a game like this. So like releasing like what we have at the moment is kind of like I think it's the only way to make something like this work, because then it sets the like there's no expectation anymore. There's only like a baseline and ideas for the future. If
And
that makes any sense. Yeah.
That's actually what you did with KSP as well. And
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, KSP
Yeah.
evolved like that naturally, and I think it's the only way a game like KSP can happen is by gradual evolution like that.
I think I was going to
Because-
say the same thing. With KSA, it's about let's just get what are the main parts of KSP that we loved, and let's get things working and running, and then, like Dean said, let's find the fun, and it'll take us where it takes us. Like, yeah, I don't like to set these long-term goals of we're going to have Interstellar and we're going to have colonies. It's like we'll just find the fun as we go. Like, if it happens, it happens. If we have colonies and Interstellar, great, but that's so far down the road from where we are right now.
Wow,
that-
what a-
yeah.
while we're talking as well, someone should stream the game. I thought, for those who need multiple stimuli. Who wants to stream the game? I
Can we get
could, but I
some
tend to get
subway
really
surfers on the
distracted.
side as well?
I just want to say on that point that you guys were talking about while someone's sorting out this to stream the game, was that I remember sitting down. One of the first, or maybe it was the first or second time we sat down in front of a whiteboard to like discuss all of this, and obviously we've thought about, and even back then we were thinking about all the colony and interstellar and all that stuff all came up in this big initial discussion about like, hey, what is it that we're going to do? But then we were all fairly pretty on board when we were going, cool, that's not something to think about now. You don't sit down at that point in front of a whiteboard and say, we're going to have colonies, we're going to have this and that. A lot of that comes, I guess, you take it for granted. But then even now, however long later, we're still not ready to sit down and be like, cool, this is the plan for that. We're all thinking, hey, we need to get a really, really solid base that's fun, and then inch forward and work all that out from there. And it's just, I don't know, it was just giving me flashbacks of that first whiteboard session that we're doing.
I think one thing that's good, and hopefully it comes across, is we are previously in the town hall. I think we really had to swat away a lot of stuff and say, we're doing the boring stuff. It's too early to talk about that. I think the more and more gameplay is on the horizon for us, if that makes sense. And I think if you look at the progression of when we watched the first batch of videos that came out or streams that came out from the content creators, we reacted very quickly to a number of those. So we realized, hey, we actually really easily can chuck a bunch of stuff in for Rendezvous. It's just not something we'd done. And it was very easy for us to start getting that in because we realized it was actually really fun to do Rendezvous. And we had 2 vessels in there. And it was also a great demonstrator of the stability of our Kepler simulation and stuff like that. So I think the good news is that we'll start to see more and more iteration of that. I'm conscious that we haven't got through many questions.
Maybe we should tackle the one I keep seeing that keeps coming up about, are you going to release on Linux and are you going to release on Mac OS?
Yeah, so we've the Brutal team operate on Macs, Linux, Windows. So the core Brutal side of it always supports those things. But for us at the moment, we're only shipping Windows build. And, we do try and make best efforts to make sure it can run on Proton and stuff like that. But a lot of it is about simplicity. So at the moment, our builds are mastered semi-manually as we basically get together the entire process. Oh, Zenoeth, if you push F1, there is an FPS counter. I'm reading the chat at the same
so
time.
it's not going to be super representative.
Say again?
He's running the debug build.
He's running debug?
I launched from Ryder.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I totally got distracted. Oh yeah, so at the moment we're
Sorry,
just
did I
doing
get-
the Windows
getting-
build. While
You're getting
we get
anybody's way
things
just now? I pressed the wrong button, sorry.
as he's not playing debug now, that's good. Yeah, so I don't know. Did you want to tackle that any better, Jamie? I feel like I butchered it.
No, I think you've covered it right. So, as Chris, I think I saw Chris talking about it in one of the chats. So, yes, the developers, us, are the brutal guys. Some of them have Macs and some have Linux, and we try to make it run most of the time. But it's not a priority right now. No.
Yeah, because it adds time to the build. The build process is actually really fast at the moment, but there's still a deployment and stuff like that, and we're still going through the whole process. Like last night, I added it so that we read our changelog and actually ship our changelog as JSON. Maybe you can open that up, Mason. It's file and then version history in the middle of doing your orbital mechanics. So you can see here, we're actually including in the game the change log and stuff like that. So that all has to be baked into our build process. We're not currently cooking our data, so we're not packing the data together. There's actually a few modders that are already trying to mod the game. They're having a lot more success modding the game than I actually thought they would. And so that will have to go in. So the idea is to sort of keep the runway clear and keep it simple while we're in this highly iterative phase. Next question. We should try and smash through as many as we can.
Yep, I liked this one. PushDXT asked, what kind of API implementations will be possible for potential usage in the industry?
Did you want to repeat that, Dylan? I was flying. I didn't hear it.
Did we just completely lose Dylan? The question was, what kind of API implementations will be possible for potential usage in the industry and STEM applications, and will there be a built-in way to round-trip flight data and craft control to external programs?
I'm guessing we've lost Dylan and Rocket.
Like we might have. Jamie, have you got any ideas on that?
I think Discord is not sending everyone's sound to everyone, so a lot of people are confused right now.
Yeah, everyone's been cutting off quite early when they're speaking for me. There's been so much dead air, it's been quite strange.
Yeah, I think we've basically broken Discord for some people.
You just want to kill your stream, Mason, and just see if that makes any difference.
Okay, copy. I hear you for the first time.
Well, it's working already.
Dylan, can you hear me?
Yep. And
I
I
can
think if
hear you.
anyone is having audio issues, feel free to jump over to the Twitch, and hopefully that's a
People are
bit more
saying that it's
reliable.
back and it's much better. So I think
Okay.
whatever that was, it fixed it.
I mean, I stopped streaming, so Discord
We
must
made the
not like
mistake
before.
combining
sending-
two Discord features.
It was doing it before streaming, I think, though.
Yep.
Yeah, so API wise, that's broadly how we're focusing on it, is that we want to layer in a lot of those things. That's going to require us talking with modders, figuring out what's easy. Some of the stuff is going to be done later, and some of the stuff will be done sort of earlier, just kind of as needed. So if you can imagine, we kind of build the interfaces, we build the API to need to integrate. We might put a couple of examples in, and that provides future proofing for if we all die, the studio dies, and that the game can still live on because stuff can be clipped in and out as APIs come and go. That got dark at the end there.
I was going to say, I hope people's sound came back just as you started to get into that.
We're all going to die. Nothing is permanent, et cetera, et cetera. Except your interfaces. Your interfaces live forever. Next one.
EJ sent me a question. He said, we've seen lots of space flight in the pre-alpha, but what are the plans with airplanes aerodynamics? Is a space plane hangar in the works?
I will hand over to my esteemed colleague, Stefan. I feel like Stefan should answer that.
Yeah, so aerodynamics are obviously 100% planned. We're not working on that quite yet, just because we have a bunch of other stuff to get through. Like, if anyone's been watching the community, like the content creator streams and videos, like our collision with the ground isn't very good. You can actually just fly through other vehicles right now. So there's a bunch of stuff on the basic just interaction side to get through, but it won't be very long, I think, before it starts to become like a pain point in the game that there isn't like a real like aerodynamic system. Right now you just have only drag and no lift. So yeah, there's I know there's people throwing suggestions in some of the Discord stuff, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So I think the day is not crazy far in the future where we'll start actually putting that stuff together. As far as the building side, I'll throw that back to Dean or whoever wants to take that.
I mean, we had a lot of ideas in terms of the building. That's actually one area that I think a lot of the procedural parts are really good. I love building aircraft in both Kit Hack, which is Felipe's game, which everybody should check out, but also in KSP as well. I had huge aeronautics programs in my KSP games and stuff like that. So I think it's something that we're a big fan of. I believe it fits in really nicely with a probes before crew approach, because the history of aeronautics is fascinating. One of my probably favorite vehicles ever is the X-15. So there's a lot of union, I think, between what we want to do with the game and aeronautics. In terms of what that's actually going to look like, I actually think we can come back to what Jamie summed up before, which is we try and focus a lot on. We have these ideas about what. Sorry, is that? There's some funny gifs being posted, or images, emotes being posted in the chat. But yeah, so we focus a lot on what we're the mechanics that we're adding, and then we iterate. So we might make a hypothesis that this would be fun to do aeronautics wise, and then we actually get it together quickly, try it out, and see how it goes.
Yeah, a good example of that is, I had a lot of preconceived notions about like time warp, from playing KSP, and when we talk about gameplay around satellites or keeping the attitude of something, it just wasn't even in my mind as like, hey, that might be a really important like gameplay feature. But once we see Stefan having infinite time warp, keeping aircraft attitude, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, geosynchronous satellites, that'll be an actual reachable and fun gameplay thing. And we couldn't have seen that before we saw it.
We were leaning very hard on that limitation as if it was a feature, weren't we? Like all of us for like 10 years.
Yeah.
I think so, but also that also teaches you something. So, and that's a good example. I think we've figured out something good, and we've figured out that's really cool, and I love where we're going with it. But we also then need to see how does it feel in playing, and how do we need to do other bits and pieces as well to layer it in. It's that iterative process, and I think we're all really on the same vibe there. Where we sort of put something in, we try it out, and then give genuine feedback on it. And I think even our remote team members have just been super good at doing that. I know it's really hard sometimes for BlackRack and Lynx to like connect with us, but I think they've just been doing a really fantastic job. I sort of don't know how that's gone for them, because time wise it doesn't really work well for a steering group. How has that actually been going for you, Lynx? Here's a question from me.
What, from
process.
working on the other side of the world?
Yeah.
It's had its challenges, to be honest, but it's how I've sort of operated like professionally the entire time. So it's not like it's completely new. I just get my head down and get on with it. Funnily enough, the only time I speak to these guys is on the stage here. So this is my second time speaking to everyone. So hello. But no, it's not too bad.
From my perspective, it seems like BlackRack and yourself have really good alignment. The work you're doing seems to be exactly aligned with what we want to do and how we want to head. And you seem to have just clipped in with a whole bunch of the standards and approaches we wanted to do effortlessly. At least that's how it seems from me, which has been fantastic.
I think having BlackRack on the team quite a bit before me was good, because BlackRack's definitely the more experienced out of us two. I mean, he's got his own niche, right? But because we've kind of worked together with KSP modding, we've not collaborated on anything, but he released his volumetric clouds for KSP and then deferred. And then I had to catch up and implement stuff to work with those mods. And, so we've been working together kind of for quite a while. So us both being on the other side of the world means that we can talk and we can work things out whilst you guys are all sleeping or whatever, or whilst you're up at 4 a.m. talking in the general chat. But yeah, we've been getting on pretty well. It's cool.
And you've also tackled some of the things that we sat down, saw, but we're just kind of face palming, oh, I don't know how we're going to find the time to deal with this, and then we wake up and you guys have started looking at it.
Yeah, I'm having a bit of a headache right now trying to fix the terrain jittering, but I'll get it done over the weekend, hopefully. It's just complicated.
Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving there. Maybe we should grab some more questions.
Yep, I'll kick us in. This might be a bit of a gimme, but Astro asked, will loading times be 20 minutes or 3 hours? But seriously, will the loading time be fast?
I mean, it's super fast. I think if you go look at some of the content creator streams, you'll see that it loads very, very, very fast. There's several reasons for that. We don't have a big tool set to work with. So if we don't have a game engine. So everything we do is designed to do something. So there's no bloat at all. You push play in writer. There's no editor. There's no game scene. There's none of that kind of stuff. We're also using the latest C#, and plus a whole bunch of stuff that the Brutal team have added in for us as support. And so we do parallel loading. So when you start loading, we actually spin up a whole bunch of workers to try and load everything, and everything gets loaded at once. Now, obviously, in many cases, there can be blocking, so you can only grab one thing off the disk at a time. But there's a whole bunch of other processing that happens in addition to loading stuff off the disk. I don't know, Morrow, you fixed up my spaghetti code on that. Did you want to give... Because you made it run so much better. You made me look bad, actually. Well, actually, no, I do a pretty good job of making myself look bad.
Yeah, the loading process right now is fairly simplistic. If we want to keep it super fast, I think we're going to be able to do that effectively, and I'm not too worried about it. There's a lot that can be made faster, and it's already pretty quick, and we're already loading very large textures and a lot of content.
I was going to say, coming from Stationers, which is a Unity project, which has a lot of data to load, it's night and day to work on. You can iterate so quickly because you're from writing code to running the game in 15 seconds.
And also, like, I should probably add, like, compared to KSP itself, which it ran on Unity and had to do all of its external asset loading on top of Unity and around Unity, that was probably like the primary source of like lag and slowness during loading, was the fact that like Unity has its own built-in asset loading stuff, which is just it's there if you're loading like normal game levels, but that's all for like built-in, like pre-baked project assets. If you want to load stuff at runtime, especially back then, you had to write your own loaders from scratch, and that has to run as game code on top of everything else. So like KSP was notoriously bad at loading stuff efficiently. So it's almost an invalid question, I would say, because it's so different that like it's like a blank slate. Loading stuff right now is like it's just like what Unity would do internally that we wouldn't even have access to.
Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, maybe we should also, once and for all, talk about. Well, we've done it before, but I see people asking the same questions in the chat about, oh, what challenges are you facing building your own engine instead of using Unity or Unreal? I think we need to we're not building an engine. We need to be clear about that. We don't need a game engine to run or to build a game. Game engines only came along like 15, 20 years ago. Before that, games were written without game engines. And that's pretty much what we're doing here. We don't need a game engine.
So and that's why
we're not building a
like,
game engine.
Yeah, we like to use that word framework. So there's a few brutal engineers in here. The brutal engineers are the ones who work on that framework. And that's the idea, is we're really just providing this assistance to kind of piece together stuff. Actually, and maybe one of our next town halls, it might be worthwhile us seeing if we can grab a couple of the early modders like Lexi and that, who've actually, because they'll have an interesting perspective coming in completely outside, not even having access to the source, but being able to decompile it and stuff like that, and start to look at how things go together. They'll probably have a really interesting perspective. But we don't get a lot of the convenient stuff. We don't get handed a lot of the stuff. I've described Brutal as being really, really good at making you know what you want to do. You can't really accidentally do anything with Brutal. So when I wanted to do the stars, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it was actually very quick for me to do it. But there was a high cost in terms of knowing what you want to achieve. And that we actually think for a game like KSA is actually really important, because that's a forcing function to make you really think through what you're doing. And I think that's true with how we're approaching terrain, Stefan's physics stuff, and things like that.
Just to throw one more thing on the original question, which was on loading times. Once again, I think a lot of it comes from being in the mindset of what KSP used to do. Like, not having scenes is such a game changer. Like, just, you press right bracket, left bracket, and you jump from a craft that's around Jupiter and then back to Earth, and it's just instantaneous, and there's no hitching, there's no loading. It's all just loaded at the same time.
You're baiting me, aren't you? This is bait.
Well, I mean, no one even talked about the seamless nature of our.
Yeah, because people didn't want to drive me on a big rant. I'm not a fan of game engine's obsession with scenes. And it's a shame, because actually you can have a concept of a scene without going as far as Unity or Unreal does. It definitely has its place. If you're making a first-person shooter, you'll have like your level and stuff like that. But it's people have got in their head this idea of, okay, but where's the center? And it's like, when you start an application, that, you know, when you start Chrome, there's no like 3D center in there. If they wanted to draw a 3D model, they can totally draw a 3D model if they wanted. So, you know, we got to, by starting with this framework, you know, from scratch, we got to think about, well, what is the paradigm for our game? And I've used the term immediate mode rendering, which I don't think is necessarily entirely true, because we do retain a lot of stuff, but mostly it's very much where we are rendering each frame completely independently of the last, which means that you can just be looking at the Earth one frame and then be looking at another another planet in another frame completely. It's very contextual in terms of our rendering, and that's possible because we break that mode. There's no paradigm that we're having to fit in like with Unity, where it's like, okay, well, you've got your scene, and you know there's a 0, 0 and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
that
that's a
has
really
thrown
important distinction. Like
yes,
there is
no, it
the
is.
concept of world space as such, any more than like just a like coherent coordinate space for you to convert stuff like from one frame to the other. And it doesn't need to be anything more than that. Like in Unity, you're forced to use that as like your home coordinate space or something like that.
So there was a good relevant question from Media's chat that's probably, there might be a few people asking, does not having scenes mean that having a base on the moon will affect your performance launching a rocket on Earth?
It
No.
shouldn't necessarily. Like not having scenes doesn't mean you need to load everything, including stuff you can't see. You can load stuff as you approach it, which actually even KSP used to do for vehicles and stuff. The scene is really just this kind of like more like comprehensive concept, right? Of this container for a compartment of the game. It's really like it's a concept that was designed for game levels, for games that have levels for you to go from one to the next. In a simulation type game, like it really doesn't apply. So, but yeah, to get close off the tangent, I guess it does. It shouldn't impact like performance that way. If it does,
And in
it's
fact,
optimization problem.
it unlocks more options for us to solve those kinds of issues. It makes multi-threading and rendering a lot more complex, but with a lot more options for us to solve stuff. And I suppose one of the biggest things we did was cleave the rendering and the simulation completely separately. You know, the vessels, the planets, everything is off, living in its own little world, doing its things. Much of their work is done on threads, and then occasionally they get asked to draw themselves almost as a distraction on a camera. And when you think about the sheer amount of stuff even that's in there now in terms of planets and stuff like that, very few things are really having substantial amount of stuff drawn on them, and an object can really draw itself completely differently contextually with no effort and no loading. If a camera asks itself gets asked to draw a celestial object onto it, that celestial object may be so far away it goes, okay, well, I'm just going to draw myself as a sprite this frame. So it just goes to our instant sprite renderer and says, hey, I've got a sprite here. And all it's passing up is a normal, which, you know, is floats once it gets to the GPU, and then a packed value, which contains color data and size data. So when you think about that, that's extremely low touch to achieve that. If you were trying to do that in size Unity or Unreal, you can totally do that stuff, but you're going to be jumping through a lot more abstractions. You're going to be preparing this component and that component, and you may have to have some loading or instantiation. So we can kind of cut through that.
One thing I also want to add on that front is that I think people are used to the because of KSP, the way it worked with the physics engine and a bunch of other stuff. People are used to just in those games, if you're just even in the presence of another thing that has a lot of parts, like your FPS just grinds to a halt. And so I can understand people worried about, oh, if that's happening on the moon and it's still loaded, like what's going to happen? But that is like definitely not how KSA will work. So we will have like everything that is like just settled there and doing its thing, just like being around a thing that has a bunch of parts will not be a huge performance hit by itself. At least on the physics side, we can talk about rendering, but even that we're going to do, I think, quite a bit better on that front. So like you should be able to have many things that are happening all over the solar system with like reasonable performance all the time.
Yeah, I'm itching to say something here because I was watching EJ stream yesterday and he was playing KSP1 and he was testing his new rig out and he had all these planes lined up on the end of the runway and trying to test how many can I put and what's the hitching like and everything. And it's like, and I'm just sitting there thinking, yeah, we're not going to have any of these problems because we're not going to use PhysX, right? So I think I commented in his chat, like, well, that's not going to be a problem in KSA because all those vehicles are just sitting there on the ground. They don't need to be running any physics to do that. But in Unity, they do because you're forced to live within the system that Unity provides. And so PhysX is running on all of those things when you don't need to. They're not interacting with each other or anything.
Yeah,
for that matter.
It's not to turn it into a sermon, but it's it's perhaps a good example of like paradigm capture that I think Jamie was talking about with game engines. So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, but once they do part physics or whatever, because people tend to only be able to think of physics in a game by talking about really a very small fraction of physics APIs that were actually designed for a very specific purpose. But when you think about it, when does, say, flight physics begin and, our Kepler, physical interactions begin? When does the math end and the physics begin? I mean, it all flows together. It's all physics. The physics is the applied mathematics. So, and I think that's better for people to think about in the head. There might be chances when we want to solve our physics in a more detailed way, in which case we might bring in a physics API to do that. A great example would be if you're really close to something and you want very fine details. That's a good use case for something like Jolt or Bullet or maybe even physics to handle that from a solver approach. We actually have a solver approach for a physical problem in Stationeers, which you should go check out. If you do, go check out the beta, like and subscribe. Could we post a link in chat? So we actually added flowing water to it. And instead of our old approaches, we actually use particles as a water solver to let the particles roll around, these little spheres. You can actually see them roll around and find their route. That's a really good example of using a API as a solver. It's not replacing your physics approach. Yeah. Anyway, that's the end of my sermon on that topic.
I guess to summarize that, it's like, everyone's stuck in their game engine paradigm of Unity and Unreal, but we're not using Unreal or Unity here. So we're going to solve things differently in a different way because we're not stuck with that paradigm.
Yeah, I think another example that you can point to is, for example, something like DCS, the flight simulator, or even Microsoft Flight Simulator, or whatever. It's like those games like have a bunch of complex stuff happening, but it's not like the existence of other planes elsewhere in the world causes everything to grind to a halt. So we intend to be much more like that.
Maybe we could do a quick fire and try and just smash out really like easy ones, just to at least give people some kind of answer to some of their questions. So someone said, should the base game life support be expected? Absolutely. I mean, we have some of the, premier life support, one of the premier life support modders on the team. And it's certainly something I'm extremely passionate about to the point of being annoying. So yes, that's 100% yes. I'm trying to go through. Our functional IVA controls planned. One of my favorite things was missions using only IVA. There are a lot of very cool interiors. Absolutely, and this was something we thought very early on. I actually got my start in video games making aftermarket cockpits for Flight Simulator X and I think Flight Simulator 2000. I've got a lot of experience actually building those, and I'm very interested in the cockpit type stuff. That leads itself extremely well into our instance-based rendering work that's actually already in KSA. You can sort of fool around it. We're just waiting to get our pipeline and process going for parts. That will be able to apply to the interior cockpit. So if you imagine having a data structure in XML where a modder can come in and say, okay, this is the base mesh that I want for my interior, but they can go in and position a whole bunch of interactable switches around the cockpit. We get a massive bonus because we can be drawing those switches. We can just have the mesh once. Think of all these little switches, and in your mesh, you actually have them all replicated. You don't need that. You can just have one of them, send that to the GPU. You can even leave it on the GPU. You don't even have to send it every frame. You can just send it to the GPU and say, hey, could you hold on to this, please? I'm going to use it later on. And then send the stuff in. That's enormously performant, but it also has the advantage of meaning that modders can be making and changing the interiors of vehicles all the time. Even potentially doing it in the game as a power user. We could potentially allow you to modify your cockpit and customize it yourself in the game.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I'm not the only home cockpit nerd in this chat. One thing that I'm already doing with the current KSA build is like the fact you can detach the UI panels out of the game window, which to me is still magic, by the way. I pulled them out and I arranged them in my little fourth screen that I have below the main one. And it's placed just so that it's like slightly ahead, and it's very cockpit like, and it's already kind of like a sort of like home cockpit setup happening. And yeah, it's really cool.
I think I mean, I'm a super nerd with that. I think I bought a flight simulator cockpit thing for like 30 grand from Korea, and when it turned up, I had a call from customs and police being like, did you buy a plane part? And I'm like, no, it's for flight simulator. But actually, one thing we were thinking about maybe doing, and this is just a pie in the sky idea, as a way to get revenue with the game being free, is we were actually thinking about, could we make actually little parts that like little devices that you could use that would automatically work with the game. Little screens, little dials and stuff like that. I had actually worked on making Cytec, if anybody remembers that company. They produced a bunch of little LCD panels for Flight Simulator. Just before I left Bohemia, I actually wrote a plugin that would was the last thing I did in C++ that would work with those. And actually, I got them working better than in Flight Simulator because I got it working multi-threaded at great pain. Unfortunately, it never came out, but that let you use those in Armor. So I think that's something we're definitely very interested in that stuff for sure. That was supposed to be a quick fire question. Oh, yeah.
Here's a quick one. Will we be getting procedural parts? If so, how would that work with the subpart system? Yes, we will, and we don't know yet. There you go.
We will. The only caveat I'd add is I think a lot of us agree that procedural everything can be a bit can take away a little bit from the soul and the feel of it. I would say certainly there's some great examples of things that are really good for procedural. So wings, fairings and stuff like that. The other things might be better dealt with in some cases by allowing you to edit the parts by using subparts and being able to stretch the interiors of them and things like that. So I think you won't see necessarily procedural everything, but we certainly think there's some prime candidates. We also want to do some cool stuff like having hoses inside the parts, and Morrow actually made for Out of the Rail, one of our other games that's been in development, a really good system we can use there. Are you still confident, Morrow, we'd be able to, when it comes to it, make that do our hoses for connections?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a huge problem.
That'll be awesome. Another quickfire question was from Sky Kerman. Will KSA support a headless mode? No visual controlled by a script mod. You might have been the one that posted that in chat a while ago, and I was like, damn, so I wrote it down on my list. Yes, absolutely. Really not that difficult for us to do at the moment. It's actually a build process issue. I probably want to make the game actually be able to export a build that's a console app. Additionally, you'll be able to actually tell the client that you want it to do that too. That's what we did for Art of the Rail. So we actually had a dedicated headless like dedicated server build that would only run in console mode and was actually quite stripped down. But you could also tell any client to actually boot itself as if it was that. There was a slight difference. But yes, absolutely, that's something we want to do. Does someone else want to grab a?
Another one. Enan asked, have there been any considerations to how docking will work with high part count craft? Like I've got 2 ships of 40,000 parts each. I think we've answered that already. So if you've got 2 ships of 40,000 parts, there's actually only 2 parts that are interacting with each other. And that's
You know what? I can answer this by saying, go buy stationeers from Itch. Please someone link the Itch store because we get more money from that. And make sure. Wait, do we deploy the beta to Itch? You get a Steam key on Itch anyway. Do we deploy the beta?
Yes.
I'm just thinking. Anyway, you should play the beta of Stationeers, which has our terrain update. Very important. That shows you being able to simulate, even using Unity, like 20, 40, 50,000 things. We have each grid square has full atmospheric simulation. So hopefully that gives our bona fides of, hey, we can actually handle that. That's even though it's quite old in a lot of our approaches. This is us with the brand new C#, with brutal engineers supporting us and stuff like that. So I don't have any concerns on that stuff. And the cool thing is, our milestone that we're working on now will be a fantastic demonstrator of that.
And I could add something there. Thinking that question I think comes from like a very KSP like originating mindset, I guess, where every single part in every vehicle that you could see around you had to be fully simulated, including physics and joints and everything. So that's not a really good like benchmark, because that is like absolutely like the worst possible scenario for like simulation workload you can have. And none of that is a thing just inherently. Now that like we get like authority, I guess, to like make everything as we want it to be, instead of just around the limitations of what you can do.
Yeah, so I think that's perhaps another touchstone to kind of what Jamie had started talking off about, is that we've broken free a lot of the paradigms. That's not perfect. Like that means we have to do a lot of stuff, but one of the benefits we get is that we can sort of deal to that stuff a lot easier. There was another good
Do we
one.
want to talk about the multiplayer thing in the corner of the room?
We do, but I was trying to just smash out some of the really easy ones.
The easy
so
ones?
That people...
These are the easy ones.
Weather was a good one. Yeah. So, Mortal says, will weather interact with your vehicles and be something you can have to plan missions around, or are they just visual? I know when I'd last talked with BlackRack, which was a while ago when he was starting to look at weather, very keen on doing that. I think, Stefan, you're keen on that. You don't see any potential... Well, I mean, obviously there's always issues with stuff, but I think we're all in agreement that weather should have some impacts for the player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm imagining if you're trying to land your like space plane, through a thunderstorm, like it better be turbulent and then better be a little bit challenging.
Wind shear.
And you can check out BlackRack's. You can check out BlackRack's Patreon to see the work that BlackRack's done previously with KSP. If you've been living under a rock in the KSP community and haven't noticed any of the work that he's been doing. Someone asked, any chances of getting some Discord rich presence integration and stuff like that? Would be cool to see people's flight status in Discord. Absolutely. I actually wrote a custom implementation of Discord integration for Out of the Rail. And I will say this as politely possible. I did not like Discord's approach to documentation in their SDK. They have since changed it, to be fair. That was very difficult and a very unpleasant period of my life. However, we've got that. And so, yes, that's something we very much want to do. Anyone? I've been talking a heap. Dylan, you can think of any other good, really quick fire ones we can smash out?
I mean, you're really good at turning non-quick fire ones into like a good long answer. So we could go to the rest of the team. Something like Nova Raptor asked, you guys probably researched a ton of aerospace concepts for KSA's development. Which one was your personal favorite? Anyone but Dean is allowed to answer this one.
Crickets.
That's a really advanced question.
That's a really difficult question.
I feel like
where do
only
you want me to
Stefan can
go?
answer that one, right? Or maybe Jamie.
Do you
He's
want-
got his big book.
Do you want me to talk about all the different maths things? I mean, aerospace? Well, I mean, Stefan came from the aerospace industry. Maybe he answers this one.
I was going to say, I think I'm disqualified because it said for KSA, and I had to join my job.
You told me for this one, yeah.
Okay. Then there's a
been-
similar. Sorry, go for
I
it,
personally have been reading through NASA documentation from when they were doing the Apollo flights, so that's been interesting to read through.
I have a bunch of NASA Apollo documents and stuff that I've referenced frequently. But lately it's just been a lot of math papers, not necessarily aerospace papers. But I guess in a way they're solving astrodynamical problems such as a closest approach solver. I'm currently we've been researching that with Zach, our resident PhD, who's not here. But yeah.
Now, I'm not answering it, but I'm building on that, which is a good example of that would be why we chose the coordinate system we did. The handedness was to align closer with your source documentation from NASA.
Right, because in the real world they all use right-handedness, and we got sick of everything was left-handed under Brutal and Vulcan, and so we got our Brutal guys to fix that for us, right, Chris?
Yeah, we flipped it all sideways.
There's another question here, which is, will there be a system to launch multiple rockets at once? That also listen to your inputs. Yeah, so I mean, the great thing that we've got at the moment is, and this is the work that Stefan's been doing with the little flight computer, is all really supportive of stuff like being able to layer in Kerbal OS and stuff like that. So systems like that will be very possible for you to be able to schedule burns and stuff like that. All super possible.
I also actually, to answer the previous question just briefly on the aerospace side, the one thing I did enjoy, I actually legitimately did pick up for KSA, was the shuttle crew operations manual. So if anyone wants to see like how real spacecraft are flown, it's when I was looking at interfaces and stuff.
Oh, I want that.
It's a neat little read.
I actually
another good
on
one.
That
The
science.
nav ball.
Go ahead.
Sorry, another good one is the nav ball. The discussions we had about the nav ball and what's real and why it looks the way it is, right?
That's because every time I did something, Stefan and Mason and Simon would say it's not good enough. Needs this.
Maybe it wasn't
a joke. Wow, nobody laughed. Savage.
Actually, I have an example from Stationeers where we had to implement some thermal radiation stuff, and we ended up using the Stefan Boltzmann law, which ends up doing this like thermal radiation, and there's something that happens to the fourth power, and basically after playing it, like a lot of the thermodynamics in Stationeers was happening too fast, and so we decided to modify physics to make sure that the game could be fun, and we brought that fourth power down to like a square so that players could appreciate thermal radiation. slight aside.
Did anyone else see any other good questions from the team that they wanted to tackle?
I was just laughing because the Discord, the Confluence has joined the ranks of Discord and seemingly can't handle a bunch of people chucking comments on stuff at once. I don't think it's necessarily a small one. There was a question earlier about different propellants and things like that, which I don't think we kind of covered that side of. We haven't really thought about it yet, but I expect that if we were talking engines, there would be a system to support different kinds of propellants.
Well, if they grab the beta for stationeers, you can actually make actual mixed rocket fuels and launch rockets in stationeers now. Very advanced. And actually in stationeers, we've talked a lot about, so we're adding, not for this next update, for the one after, we're going to be adding a whole bunch of rocket fuels. What was the specific question around the propellants?
Let me find it. Didn't you make it so that welders and stationeers behave differently with different fuel mixes?
They do.
As
There's
well?
actually an achievement for that.
Yeah, stationeers is like you, instead of playing as the person in the rocket, you're playing as the person managing the launch tower.
KSA is sponsored by Stationeers, which is actually a reasonable segue into a very easy question, which is, while you won't be releasing on Steam, do you have any plans to bring it to other stores such as Epic Games, simply use your own launcher, both, or something else? One thing that so kind of as an almost joke, when we were starting the industry pre-alpha, I posted an announcement channel saying, hey, if you're part of a space company or organization and you don't have access, hit me up. I have had hundreds of emails, many hundreds, heading to higher than that, from people, from scientists, from people who work at government, from many institutions you'll heard of. The most adorable thing is actually people, I won't mention any of the places, because just because they're wanting to try this stuff out doesn't mean their organization necessarily, it's not an endorsement, so I'm not going to mention any of them. But anyway, some of these organizations are like very well-known scientific institutions, and it's really adorable when they're trying to explain to me what their organization is. I'm like, yeah, no, I know what that is. But that really underscored to me just how many scientists and stuff like that are really passionate about this kind of game. And that's why we really just want to make sure that there's not barriers to several things. The survival of the project outside of even the studio. If you look at the history of what's happened to our beloved KSP and what happened to Felipe particularly, we don't want that same kind of stuff to happen. So I really think getting KSA to as many people, we say that games can inspire and inspiration should be free. And so we want to look and find other ways to make sure that we can keep people paid, get the resources on. And I really think it's very important we find that. So the problem I have with some of those other stores is they're really just poor versions of Steam. And I really think I want to see a game like KSA to be free of those restrictions and actually think about ways of making a forever game that can clip in and use different APIs as things come and go. Yeah. I don't know. Did I take that one right? Do we have any Word people here? Maybe they could take it.
There was a comment in the Twitch chat that I said to Alyssa, I'm mad they didn't phrase it as a question because I could have used it, because they said, I used to be so critical of stationeers and thought you guys were going to abandon it when Icarus came out. You changed my mind about this a couple of years ago as the passion continued to get spilled out to stationeers and your vision was becoming a reality. Thanks for being an awesome dev and dev team. I just thought I'd chime that in there.
Yeah, and look, I think a degree of skepticism is warranted, particularly it's like if you look at KSA and our plan for doing it. But I think the things worth doing aren't easy. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there's a lot of risk around our approaches and things like that. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. Just, in fact, sometimes if the thing is hard, it might mean that it's actually kind of important. So we have to try some of those things.
Just one down a little bit from that, which was kind of related. Aaron asked, any ideas if the game will ever be open sourced, or even if it's a case of open sourcing it due to end of life? And I sort of added that one to the list basically you've answered it, except that a difference between, this goes back to game engines and stuff, like it can be really hard to open source a game built on other people's technologies. So I mean, I'm probably speaking for Dean, but if KSA made it to, its end of life, like, yeah, there would be no technical reason or legal reasons why it couldn't be open source. So that's another thing. People get upset, like, oh, why isn't this game just made open source for us now that it's dead? It's because legally they can't, so we're sort of
Yeah,
free
we
from
have
that.
some issues with, I think Fmod would cause us some issues. But I have actually thought about, well, that doesn't necessarily, we can still provide the source technically. Anyway, it gets a little bit murky.
Yeah.
But I have thought about putting a dead man switch in that I would stash somewhere that would just dump the source if I didn't respond to. Actually, we should make it an email. Then guaranteed it would get distributed while I'm alive. I'm not very good at answering my emails. Dylan, other ones that we want to cut through. Should we talk about multiplayer?
You can if you want. I just thought because it came up because there'd been that first commit of Aaron doing that sort of first implementation of multiplayer. So some people were asking some questions about it. I know we've sort of discussed it before, but just in terms...
multiplayer is actually not something that worries me too much because we've actually got a lot of experience with it. With Stationeers, we actually stopped the whole project for like 9 months and completely redid our own custom multiplayer implementation, which has worked fantastically. Don't run it in Steam peer-to-peer, though. Steam peer-to-peer is garbage. You do have to connect it in directly. Someone asked about, do you guys plan on multiplayer time warp working? We very much settled on the idea of a shared time work. So think about it like a paradox game where, the host can say, hey, anyone can change the warp, but we all go at that warp. Or, you ask for warp and you vote on it and it happens, or only the host can set it and stuff like that. It simplifies so many data things. It simplifies UX things. So that's how that will be working. Did we have any other ones that we wanted to cover?
One of the first questions that got asked, and it was kind of a plant because it was from Fluxpoint, but I think a lot of people have wondered and it's relevant, and I know we've addressed it a lot, but I'll give you a chance to speak on it. It was simply, how can I contribute?
It's a good question. I think we don't really have a good mechanism to contribute at the moment because I think it's really dangerous. There's just been a few examples in the industry lately where people get very excited about an idea, and then while they're excited about that, they kind of pull this thing over the ear. So our view is that people shouldn't actually be able to contribute until they can try it. That's a better way to do it. So we won't actually be opening up our formal contributions process for people to be able to give money to support the project until you can actually download the build, which we think is just really foundational to establishing a solid future. Definitely would encourage people to try out Stationeers, to try out KitHack. You can go to there and check them out. I would say, unfortunately, Felipe doesn't get all the money from KitHack, but hopefully we can sort that out. So just, follow Felipe, keep an eye on the future things that Felipe will do and stuff like that. But yeah, with Stationeers, you can also try out Stationeers. You could try it out for a couple of hours on Steam. That definitely helps. Otherwise, wait for our public pre-alpha, and then you can make your decision then on the facts of how you find it and whether you think there's alignment. Some of the decisions we make are not always the greatest decisions. We'll often make decisions because we have to. Yeah. If you buy KitHack and you don't leave a positive review, I will come to your house and hunt you down. I can say that. I don't get anything from it. So, I'm just saying that. Other questions?
I mean, we can jump back into some of the other ones. Sorry, you go for it.
This is a good one from Marco Fixit. What struggles are you finding with the current gaming industry? The biggest frustration I have is the gaming community is kind of a zeitgeist, tends to talk itself into outcomes. So people say things that are sort of true, but not fully. So here's something that's true, but with a but. Piracy isn't something developers should do much about. But that doesn't mean that piracy doesn't hurt sales. We know that last time, but via a bug with our meta server, there was a brief period in time when by pure accident I was able to tell that there was a version of Stationeers that was only available on a torrent. And it was more popular than the base game. So more people were pirating Stationeers, which is a very niche game, than were buying it. Or had, were playing it, more people were playing it on a pirated version than on a bought version. So I simultaneously think developers shouldn't be actively doing things against piracy, but I also think that people say, no, if I like the game, I'll buy it and stuff like that. And so that, I think it's... Oh, sorry, you want to say something on that, Felipe?
No, couldn't agree more. I would just say, like, piracy, like you said, like, it's not that it doesn't hurt, but as a developer, the only thing you can do about piracy is aggravate your honest players.
Yes, that's a really good way of summarizing it. So KSA is kind of cutting out the middle person there and saying, well, why spend all this money on DRM and stuff like that? Why do all of this work there? Why not just do work on the game and say, here's the game? And if you like us, and you want us to see us keep doing work and you want us to hire more people like we have and pay them better and stuff like that, then support us. Which is what streamers have to do, what content creators have to do and stuff like that. So that the biggest issue I have in the industry at the moment is gamers sort of talking themselves into outcomes. So people saying, the AAA is having a terrible time and indies are the future. Steam is just like the Hunger Games, where, one indie working out of a basement somewhere gets elevated up and says, congratulations, you have won, here's tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And everybody's like, that's the system working. But that's like watching the Hunger Games or reading the book and going, oh, this is a really good outcome because somebody won and it got all the kids out of the house and into the outdoors. It's like most of them died. That's not a good it's not a good moral of the story. And I think the unfortunate problem we've seen with Steam is it's become like the App Store where, our biggest challenge is declining revenues. We see declining revenues even while satisfaction increases, even while our review score increases. A good example, we released Great Hunt's DLC for Icarus, and we hit above top 40. And what we noticed was it took 33% of the revenue that we'd previously taken to get to that position. So that says that either Steam's revenues are down significantly or that revenue is more and more concentrated in the top 10 or so. Now, I suspect it's probably a mixture of both. So I think to me, that's the biggest issue we're facing right now. So if you like something, you must support it. And that includes your content creators. That's why you'll hear me talk about this a lot. If you like what a content creator is doing, and you can, please support them. Go subscribe to them, like right now. Go, and if you have more than that, there's a lot of people who can't support their streamer. Maybe they watch the stream and they'd love to, but they have no money. So in which case, if you do have money, and I try and do this, I'll drop into a stream and just gift a whole bunch of subs. Like that's so important. And I think the same process that happened to the streamers and content creators is now happening to game developers. So they need you. And you might think I'm terrible. That's fine. Go support the game developer that you love because they need it. They won't talk about it. Game developers aren't talking about this. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Felipe, because I think you're a lot like me.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna, I'm feeling so seen right now. I can't even put it into words. Like, it's insane. I could go on into my own rant, about the state of indie development. Like if you're putting your game out on Steam and hoping for the best, it's what you said. Like that's like planning your career around the premise of having won the lottery to begin with, and it's completely unrealistic. And one thing that I like try to get people to understand, especially about like things like Steam reviews, is it's the mechanism behind like the hive mind in most social networks, but it's especially like insidious and how it can kill or like deify a game out of like basically random chance. Um, if you will bear with me to a bit of a tortured analogy, like you know how you when you super cool water, it won't freeze until there's like a small grain of ice, so that other bits of ice can form around it. Like that's called a nucleation site. So the idea is that like this is the same thing that happens when you have a public forum like Steam reviews. That those early bits of random opinion will come in, and they're just as random as any other, but because they are the first ones, they will seed other opinions that aren't original anymore because they're based on those initial ones. So those first like couple hundred opinions you get on anything, it could be a YouTube video, a game on Steam, pretty much a product on Amazon, anything that's subject to reviews like that is now subject to this kind of nucleation site of a like agglomerated opinion that's biased by random opinions that came before them. And especially during like the early stages where it's still statistically significant that every review matters, this can absolutely kill your project. You get like one guy hating on your game the right way, his review gets upvoted to the top as most helpful, even if it makes no sense. It can kill your game right there. Like one guy's review, and that guy is absolutely like detached. He has no commitment to updating that opinion or even accounting for it in any way. Like you can just leave a bad review on a game on Steam, refund it, like zero stakes for you, and walk away and leave that potentially like staining the opinion of the game forever. And that's like when you think about this from a business perspective, like as a developer, like this is my career, and you put years of your life into something to have that sort of random chance be responsible for your odds of success like in life. It's kind of absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? But this is what happens. This is the reality of putting an indie game out on Steam today. It wasn't like this when we did KSP. Like KSP started out of Steam, and like when Steam reviews became a thing, like we already had enough players that we were extremely fortunate, and we're like, and KSP became one of the top rated games on Steam. But like that's because we already had the community to like basically defend the image of the game. But without that, you are exposed to this kind of like randomized starting point, which could be good or bad. Like it could even like be falsely bad, and you get like a glowing review that's even like exaggerating, and it gets like a game that's not that good like to look amazing, and it becomes a new like a success story, one of those like lottery winning success stories, just because it rode like the high end of the random curve, you know. Okay,
Someone
I,
called us out in chat. Felipe, a terrible modder says rocket ranch to harvester rank. Smiley face. But I think yeah, and it's funny because I think we have seen a parallel of that already in the App Store with what happened on mobile, and I'm worried that we're speed running our own version of it. Yeah. Anyway, Dylan, sorry,
sorry.
I wanted to
Sorry
throw
for
that.
the rant.
I wanted to throw that in there because I thought it was
that,
important.
I'm done.
Yeah.
No, it was funny because that question was under a section in my question list that originally was titled rant bait, so that worked perfectly. I credit. Yeah, I'm happy. One that's probably relevant right now and probably a short one is one of the first questions that got asked in the thread was Alien Agent saying, "How long is this Q&A supposed to last anyway?"
Yeah, it's a good question. I like to think hopefully we see that this was more structured than the last one. I think that was partially because we were trying to show the game, which I find very difficult, at the same time as talk about it and have it more structured. That was one of the reasons why I really wanted to push the industry pre-alpha out, because it means that the content creators can get it. It's a relatively small group of people, so we can manage the support from it. They're also experts at making content. So go check out, and many of them have made just fantastic content already. So please go check that out, and please go check out some of the smaller content creators as well, because there's really some fantastic smaller content creators out there doing work too. Yeah, so it's just a very efficient process. So hopefully our future town halls will be more like this. It'll be good for us to hold them after our significant steering groups, where we come up with our next milestone. So we just finished our last one, so this was well timed for that. Did anyone on the team want to say any final thoughts? I don't know if any of the team members had anything they wanted to bring up. Honestly, feel free to, because it's just been me ranting.
There is one thing that's a bit of an elephant in the room, at least that I get. So can you hit the nail in the coffin? Caves. Yes or
no
no?
to the caves. But I mean, I do say no to things passionately with stationeers, and then they happen. I just don't think that's one of those cases. We're very, very pragmatic.
Caves in KSA.
In KSA, yeah. So I'm not a fan of cutting out terrain is just really messy. Yeah. Unless you came to me, Lynx, and was like, please, can we, here it is, and we can do it, and it's easy. It would just be no. Even if we can visually do it, doing it, then having this exception and the physics side of it is just too difficult. What we'd be more likely to do is, if you had a very small body, we could probably import the mesh directly, like a custom mesh. But the physics for that would not be pleasant. Yeah, but
I
did see. Sorry, okay, I'll go. When the caves question came up once, I did see someone ask whether that meant that there would be no tire tracks or footprint deformations on a planet. I think I can confidently say that's not a different use case.
Well, you can do some of that stuff just by placing down splats and stuff like that. So that's easy to do.
I'm going to ask the one that I see a lot of people asking, which is, well, when are we going to go public alpha, pre-alpha?
Oh, really good question. I think that was the one we said that's the most important thing we should cover, and we haven't covered it. I think we'll talk about it a lot in our steering groups. So our idea was each steering group, which we did just in this last one, and enough of us were saying no go. So it's kind of like a rocket launch. We go around the room and say, go, no go, and it was just no go. So we just weren't there yet. There was just too many little things coming up. I really wanted us to get some good infrastructure in place. So that's why getting the change log in place, getting the game automatically tell you when there's a new update available. We just want to get all that stuff in. It's boring stuff, but it's important.
Yeah, so to answer it, because someone's gone, when though? Yeah, so as Dean just said, in our steering meetings, Dean asked the question, should we release it to the public yet? And everyone in the room says yes or no. And the steering meeting happens every Tuesday. So stay tuned.
I'm back on the terrain thing quickly. EJ's chat asked about grading terrain. In KSP, it's always tough to find a good spot to land and build a base or drive around. That would still be possible, right?
I don't know what grading terrain is.
Like flattening terrain, adjusting, altering, not making a cave, but altering the height map.
I mean, probably not. But maybe. I mean, we do have the ability to, so you can essentially do that with the terrain editing tools Lynx has got in. So, a lot of this stuff is the kind of stuff that maybe we could do. But I'm definitely of the opinion a great game is more about what you don't put in it than what you do. The reason we have kittens, which was not our preferred in the game as the game thing, not just in general, is is not, it wasn't our preferred option. It was one of convenience. Particularly the proportions allowed us to really cut down the risk for animation. Bearing in mind we're doing all of this work ourselves from essentially from close to scratch. So really we're looking at de-risking a lot of areas. So if we're doing something, it's because we think it's important towards one of our pillars. So, you know, the question of flattening terrain and that, we might be like, oh, well, actually, it's probably better for us to give you parts that allow you to make foundations or stuff like that, like frames that lock into the ground that allow you to do stuff on top of it.
I think that kind of those things belong in a class of problem that I would call like a top-heavy problem you would have in a game. Like they're all at the very, very top of a stack of other like technical things you have to have even to have that situation to begin with. So like by the time you get there, like there's an array of solutions you can look at and decide like how to take that on if it becomes that much of an issue.
Yeah, I think again I'd throw in the go play Stationeers there because yeah, exactly. You could just the way Stationeers deals with it, I like where you put frames down and build yourself a platform. That makes a lot more sense to me. Don't also.
Stationeers does allow
I'm
you
going
to
to
edit
ask
the terrain.
what the real reason people were asking that too might be because in KSP shit just slides around everywhere, right? So maybe that's why they're asking. In which case, yeah, well, as we've talked,
Yeah, that's a good point. Like,
we will not have that problem because
help.
something that's placed on the ground won't have physics, right?
If finding the fun takes us there, absolutely. And I like to think that's our studio superpower. We're really into that idea that games are played, not made. That's super important. Yeah. And actually, you'll start seeing us do some of the early phases of our custom planet work. Actually, I think Austin was here before, but I think he had to go. Our environment director, who come back to us from Bethesda. He abandoned us for Bethesda for a while, but he's back here now. So he's actually been leading the charge with redoing Stationeers. And if you check out some of the comparison videos, actually, I might, you know what? I'll find it. That terrain one, yeah. I can't do multiple things at once. But yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say. I found it. I will link it. If you want to see what has changed with Stationeers, I posted a video in the chat there. It's a really good video that kind of summarizes just how profound some of that stuff is. That was a product of us playing the absolute heck out of Stationeers, like really playing it. And what hopefully you've seen from, we go and we watch the content creators' videos and we go, okay, that really needs to be added. This really needs to be changed. And we go off and play the heck out of it to figure it out.
Cool. Well, if no one else on the team has any other questions for you, and we've answered all of the chat ones that we have time for.
No, but yeah, thank you everybody. We look forward to giving you more information as things come along. We will be recording.
Don't wait so long until the next one.
Well, wait. I mean, we have recorded it. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, you guys.